Thank you for being here. I'm super excited about this. This was an idea that I wanted to try and try to use it to reach as many different people as possible. Sort of the origin of this is this past spring, our band directors did a leadership clinic up in the northern part of the state, and they asked me if I wanted to come along and present something. And I'd never done anything on leadership before. I mean, I'd done a lot of percussion stuff, but I was kind of foreign to the idea of a leadership clinic or a leadership seminar. But I put something together and went with them, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And so that gave me the idea of how can I share this or share these thoughts with as many different people as possible, from people that are students themselves, student leaders, teachers who are themselves percussionists or percussion directors, and uh, band directors who are not percussionists, or maybe people who are the only band director in their band, or if they work in a smaller program and they don't have a percussionist or percussion teacher on staff. How can I be of service to as many different people as possible? So I didn't know if anybody would be interested in this. I didn't know how it would go. I was blown away by the amount of people who were interested, who signed up. So I hope that I can share some things with you over the next hour that will be important, inspirational, something that will help you as you go into the fall season. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and I'll save some time at the end where I can answer those. So as I'm going, feel free to do that, and I'll do my best to answer them at the very end. Also, I'm going to be saving this video as well, so if anybody has to duck out and they want to see what they missed, let me know, send me an email, and we can do it like that. Okay. So again, this is a kind of a big topic, and one that I'm not going to pretend I can cover within an hour. The topic of leadership, and specifically percussion leadership, is something we could spend a full semester, if not an entire year on. And then when you compound it with all of the different levels and backgrounds and situations in which we all work that are unique and different, it would be impossible to come up with something that's specific to each person. So instead, what I want to do is almost create sort of a pep talk, almost a revival meeting, if you would, for this time of year. Because for many of us, I know for us in the state of Mississippi, as well as other states in the southeastern part of the country, many of us are coming up on our first week of band camp this coming week. My wife's a band director here in Starkville. She reports back to work tomorrow. The kids come in on Wednesday and off they go, which is a really exciting time because I love band camp. I'm like most of you, I'm a product of public school band. I've been fortunate enough to go on and do other things, composing, concert percussion, orchestral percussion, solo stuff, drum set, but I'm still a band kid at heart. And so every single year I get excited when it's band camp time, especially as we get ready to start our season here at Mississippi State. Our drumline comes in a few weeks, beginning of August, then the band comes in, and then just like the rest of you, we're off to the races. So just the idea of, getting the people back in and building on past successes, getting some new faces in as well. Every single year, it's never lost on me. The excitement that comes at this time of year. So hopefully I can share some thoughts with you from my experiences, and hopefully it's something you can take with you if it's something different, or if it just reinforces an idea or presents a different perspective on something you've already been doing. Any way this can be of service, I think, is very good. So again, as I said, there's a lot of specifics we're not going to have time to get into. Again, everybody comes from their own background, has their own needs, and leadership in teaching should never be a one size fits all type of thing. But I think there are some things in common, some really baseline things on which we can build. So for the next hour or so, I just want to talk about two things. Talk about how to be an excellent person, and then how to use music, or specifically percussion, to inspire this in other people, right? If we do that, I think the foundation is there for long-term success. And yes, I've seen programs be successful without that, without those leadership qualities in place, but the success is always short-lived, right? So, and I think with percussion leadership, regardless of the program, it's unique in a few ways. In percussion, and for the students that are on this call, you might have been in this position where sometimes you're in charge of running the percussion sectional. You're in charge of running the percussion rehearsal. You're quite often in charge of maintenance and keeping up with equipment in ways that other section leaders in the band don't have to. Some of you even have to write some of the music, or come up with things to play in the stands, or come up with cadences, especially if there's not a percussion director or percussion specialist there. So all of those things make the role of percussion leader unique, exciting, challenging, sometimes frightening. I knew when I was your age, I'm speaking to the students, it was something that was really scary for me, and probably the hardest job I've ever had as a teacher. And I've told this to our percussion leaders here at MSU when we had a meeting this past spring. I said that the most challenging teaching position I've ever been in is when I was the student leader of either my high school or my college drum line. And we'll talk a bit more about what makes that unique. But even if you're not 100% sure about the musical end of things, or how to clean a snare line, or how to get everything just right, there's a lot of things we can do that don't necessarily have to do with that, but can inform the culture of the program and help you make much more progress as a leader. So, first, what we're going to do is focus on small things that can make a big difference. And many of these things have nothing to do with drumming, nothing to do with playing an instrument. They're just things that I think set the stage to get the students on board, right? So creating pride and ownership, a really easy and really quick way to create pride and ownership in percussion is how we handle our equipment. Something that I tell our student leaders to do whenever we have either a clinic night in the spring where prospective students are going to be coming in, or even the night before the first day of band camp, or in our case, drum camp, I get in touch with our student leaders, and I have them get the rest of the veterans together and make sure all of the equipment is set out. Make sure it looks really sharp, right? Make sure if there's heads that need to be changed, that they're changed. If something needs to be adjusted with one of the stands or the carriers, it's fixed. Things that aren't a big deal, or things that aren't hard to fix if you get everybody there to do it. But so that way everything is lined up nice and neat. So that way there's a real strong sense of identity from the returning players. But most importantly, when the new players walk in, the only impression they have of that program, of being in the drum line or being in the front ensemble, is this really organized, sharp looking product, right? If a student walks in and there's drums laying around in disarray and whatnot, half the drums are tuned, half the drums heads need to be fixed, that creates a much different impression. If a new student walks in and right off the bat they don't know anything different, and they see okay, this is how we do things here, we set things up, we're highly organized, that's something that's going to make an impression and make it an awful lot easier to lead those students as the season progresses along. And then throughout the season, being able to delegate those smaller responsibilities. Something I'm an advocate of is almost having like a chore list for each section. This could be in the percussion room, if you have a percussion room, or just in the band hall, getting some cardboard or getting a piece of paper. And for each student, each week, have them check a box as to if they've checked out their instrument, is there anything that needs to be fixed? How are their sticks? Are their sticks beginning to wear thin? Okay, if their sticks are wearing thin or their mallets are wearing, then you'll know it might be time to get some new ones or to reorder. How are their heads? Did they check the lugs on the top head? And most importantly, the bottom head, because we tend to suffer from disappearing bottom head lugs all the time here if we're not on top of it. So having each student go through, check their lugs, check the head. If you're dealing with front ensemble, have them check the string on their instrument, have them check what kind of shape their mallets are in. So that's something where, one, it creates a level of ownership, because the student now is buying into, okay, this is my instrument, which is something as percussionists, for the non-percussionists on this call, I'll tell you, that's a unique thing for us, because oftentimes we don't consider the school instruments to be ours. You know, even if other students, like a trumpet player or a clarinet player, has a rental, that's an instrument that they take home with them. There's at least a sense of this is theirs and they have to take care of it. I think you can instill that by having this accountability check sheet. And then most importantly, it's when you break it down and have each kid take care of their own thing and check off the box or make a note next to it. It's something, if left to one person, would take forever and probably wouldn't get done. If each student just takes care of their own thing from week to week to week, it really takes no time. And so you could just say, oh, you know, by Thursday morning, that's when everybody has to have their equipment check done for that week, or any day of the week, you know, depends upon your schedule. But in doing that, you can get an awful lot done in terms of knowing when to order, knowing when to fix things. You get out in front of it. It's not like you get to 6 p.m. on a Friday night before you go out to play the football game, or if you're getting on the bus on Saturday morning to go to the competition, and all of a sudden we realize there's a broken bass drum head, or one of the rims is cracked, or we're missing a bunch of lugs and the drum can't hold pitch. We can get out in front of that much more quickly. And it also pays the dividend of the student has ownership. So they're taking a leadership role of their own accountability in making sure their equipment sounds good. And in turn, they're buying into the overall culture of the program. It's win-win-win. Okay, and from there, I think the most important thing that a student leader can do, right, is to be the example. And I know this gets talked about an awful lot. It's almost a cliche, but again, I was in a meeting with our student leaders for the MSU drumline, I think back in April or May, and our band staff was there, Elva K. Lance, Cliff Taylor, Craig Arhus, and Craig Arhus, one of our associate directors who does a fantastic job with our student leadership here, said a really great thing. We were talking to our student leaders, and 3 out of the 4 of them are brand new. So we're trying to provide them with some coaching and some resources. And he said, the only thing you really need to do as a student leader is be an example, right? I remember when I was a student leader myself, I would think, like, do I have to tell the students what to do? What happens if they don't do what I tell them? And I would just overthink this whole thing. And what he said is you just have to be the example, meaning in how you conduct yourself, but also if there's an issue, you handle it in a way you would want the other students to handle it as well. Be the example, treat them, speak to them the way you would want them to speak to you. And we'll get into those details a little bit more about interpersonal things as we go, but some real easy things you can do, again, following this being the example thing. Arrive early and leave late. That creates an impression right there. If I'm a new kid, I'm in the 9th grade, and my mom's dropping me off for band camp, and I walk in, the first person I see is my drum captain or my pit captain every single day. That sets that tone right there, right? And doing it yourself before you ask other people to do it. A really great example, as we're coming up into band camp, if your first week of band camp is this week, or if it's in a couple weeks or something, whenever your first week of band camp is, or drum camp, the first day you show up and you and all the students are there, I challenge you to do this. Have all of your music learned for that first day. If you can, have it all memorized. Imagine the impression that would make, right? If you spend some extra time between now and then, and again, I know for some of you, maybe your entire show isn't written yet, but whatever music you have, I challenge you, show up on the first day when everybody's just getting their drums out and figuring out how everything goes, how we're going to tape the sticks and which way we're going to set up and what order the snare drums are going to stand in, et cetera, et cetera. If you can show up with your music learned, imagine the statement that's going to make. And you don't have to say a word, because people will notice it. When they see you playing the parts without any problems, and they notice that you have it all learned, one, that sets the tone, because everybody knows what the culture of this percussion section is going to be. And 2, when you ask the students to learn their own music or to do anything, you set that example, and that's a powerful statement. So I challenge you, even if it's not the entire show, if you can do that, I think that's awesome. But whatever it is you're going to be working on, walk in and set the standard on that first day for where you want the rest of the group to be later on, because those examples will speak loud and clear, and certainly much more clearly than you telling people to do something as you're trying to figure out how to do it yourself. Probably the best piece of advice I could give. I'm not sure where I read this. It's not my quote. I didn't make it up. I read it somewhere, but I don't recall where. But it's something along the lines of, if you're ever wondering what to do, or you're wondering what to do with your life, be the person that you needed when you were younger. I think that's another powerful thing right there, right? Be the person that you wish you had met when you were younger. Um, because that's something that can affect people musically, but also in terms of how you affect them as people. I think we talk about buying into a program, buying into the culture of the drum line or the front ensemble or the band. And that's going to lead to better playing, and better playing leads to better performances. And, it leads to things competitively and whatnot. But what if we were to look at it in the opposite way? What that's going to do for the individual people in that group. I think back on my experiences, my first year of marching band, which was fall of 1990, I was 14, and I was one of those kids. And some of you might be this kid or might have been this kid. I needed the band more than band needed me. And it was a great place for me to develop socially, to learn teamwork, to being kind of this nerdy, gawky 14-year-old who didn't really fit in any other place, to meet with some people, meet not only with band directors, but fortunately some older kids in the percussion section that shepherded me, and looked out for me. So think about when you were that kid, and I tell my students here on the first day of band camp, we all meet, and I tell the new people that don't be afraid to ask a question. Don't be afraid to speak up and ask for guidance or anything like that, because everybody in this room, even, the baddest, gnarliest snare drummer or four mallet marimba player, they were in your shoes. I think every single person who's been in band was in those shoes at one point, right? So think back, and this could be a cool exercise if we were doing this in person. We were doing a leadership session, to go around the room and ask each of you, what is it that you needed, not only musically, but personally, when you were that kid? You were brand new, fresh out of 8th grade, and you're taking that plunge. You're walking in to the band hall at band camp, and you don't know anybody, and you're scared. What would you need? Because chances are, I would guess, a lot of our answers would all be very similar. So in thinking about how you're going to approach your role as a leader, especially in dealing with some of the younger students, some of the newer students, some of the kids who they're not entirely sure if they want to be in band. This is all a little overwhelming. They don't know about this band camp thing. How can you use that self-reflection to address finding out what those people need? And then if you start from there, again, each person's different. Each person has a little bit different need. But I guarantee you that's a really good starting place. So even if you have a little bit of time before your first day of band camp, sit down with a piece of paper. And, as you're practicing your music, because you're all going to have it learned, right, for that first day of camp now, because I challenged you. When you're taking a break from that, sit down with a piece of paper and write down, what were your insecurities? What did you need? What do you wish, or what did somebody do for you? Or what did somebody not do for you and you wish they had done? So think about that. That's an open-ended thing. I think we all, no matter how long we've been in this game, we can all spend a little bit of time with that. Okay, so the next two things that I want to talk about have a little bit more to do with how you interact with the band staff or with your percussion teacher. Because as a student leader, your job is to be an extension of your band director or of your percussion teacher, right? You're sort of the middle management there. You're not one of these students in the section, but you're also not in charge. Your job is to have an open line of communication that exists between the students and the band staff. So how do we do that, right? So find out every single day what the goals of that day are, because your job as the drum captain or the pit captain is to serve the band, right? How can you help the band get better each day? So what I would do at the beginning of each day is, again, since you're going to arrive early, right? You're going to arrive early, find your band director or your percussion teacher and ask them, what do they want done that day, right? If you're in charge of running the drum line sectional or a subsectional or something like that, ask the band director what segments of music they're going to be working on during full ensemble that day. If it's the opener measures 1 through 32 at quarter note equals 80. Okay, great. You've got that goal down. So that way, that does two things. One, you're spending your time as efficiently as possible, right? And also it lets the band director know you're on the same page with them. And I think with band staff and band directors and teachers, they have so much going on, so much to worry about. And to know that they have somebody on their side, on their team, that wants to learn what to do to forward the goal for that day, but also, and just as importantly, is open to instruction, is open to guidance, wants to be a part of the team, that's going to go an awful long way. And I think you'll learn an awful lot too about leadership from establishing this open and daily communication with your band or percussion director, right? And then from there, you can make up a schedule. If you have an hour of sectional time and there's certain things that the band director wants done for that day, maybe you do need to spend a little bit of time on the warm-up exercises. Maybe you do need to spend a little bit of time learning part of the cadence because there's some kind of end of camp parade thing. But within that, how do you get measures 1 through 32 of the opener at quarter note equals 80 fit in, right? And then from there, taking your schedule, taking your plan and showing it to the band director or to your percussion teacher. And one, that's going to show them that you're being organized and they're going to like that. And two, it'll give them a chance to give you any feedback, which not only using your leadership role as an opportunity to lead the students in your section, but use it as a great opportunity to learn in a more intimate setting from your band director, where they've gone to school for this. They've done it for years and years and years. There's going to be teaching things that you can learn from them. And it's something in academia we kind of refer to as planning and managing. The idea of how do you take a goal and an amount of time and how do you map that out? How do you break it down and schedule it? And it's always going to be a moving target. There's not the same thing each day, and some things work, some things don't. But at the end of rehearsal, going back and sort of giving a recap to your director, showing them what you did, asking for feedback, and then talking about how you can improve things in the same setting the following day, right? So that feeds into the topic of communication. Two things I think that are important when dealing with the students in your section. One, don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Probably the biggest thing, if I could go back to my beginnings as a teacher and fix one thing, would be to be okay with admitting what I did not know. I began teaching, I served as a section leader in high school and in college. And then I got to teach drum corps for a couple of summers, and I could probably give my best examples from that. In that, my years of marching drum corps, I was fortunate enough to learn from some very talented teachers, very confident And when I was 23, I got the opportunity to teach the Boston Crusaders. Somehow I was asked to do this, and I realized, wow, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was afraid to admit the things I didn't know. Like if there was something going on in the rehearsal that wasn't going right, I was really reluctant to kind of raise my hand and go, hey, you know what? That's not going well. I need to figure something else out. But the truth is, I wasn't fooling anybody, right? So if you don't admit when something's going wrong or admit that you're going about it the wrong way, one, you're not fooling anybody because everybody knows, right? And then two, they're going to start going, okay, this person's wasting our time. This person's a blowhard. But if you raise your hand and you go, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here, I'm going to ask for help. Or does anybody have any suggestions? That's okay too. You can ask the section for suggestions. In fact, the older I get in my job at MSU, I'll do this in drumline, I'll do this in percussion ensemble, I'll do this in private lessons. I'll ask the students, hey, is there anything that I'm forgetting? Is there anything that I'm missing here? What are some ways we can solve this that I haven't mentioned? And when I was younger, I would have thought that would have made me seem weak. But what it does, one, it shows that you really do have the interests of the group in mind, not your ego interests. You have the interests of the group. And two, it shows everybody else that you're not putting yourself above them, that you're willing to listen, you're willing to learn. And I think that buys you an awful lot more credit with everybody that you're working with. And most importantly, you actually get to solve the problem there because you're going to get much more input. And usually it's something obvious you didn't think of, but the people who are actually playing the part, they know the best way to go about it. The people who actually have the sticks in their hands. I do this a lot with our tenor section. I've never marched tenors before. The tenor parts I write are not the most elaborate. I rarely get behind a set of tenors. I'd embarrass myself. So I'll do that a lot. Like if there's something with a split part and you know, if there's something going on the drums, I'll ask the tenor captain or I'll ask the rest of the players, hey, like what's the best way of going about fixing this? And 9 out of 10 times, either them just saying it or some kind of collaboration between the two of us, we wind up getting to a solution much more quickly, right? And then especially when dealing with students or dealing with the section, choose your words wisely, right? We live in a culture of quick tongues and sarcasm and snarkiness and things like that. Be careful. I think, you know, going back to what I was saying before about, you know, be the person you needed when you were in their shoes. You know, take the time to really think about how you're going to say something. And that's a whole separate topic by itself. I recommend getting together with your band director or your percussion teacher. And as you're sort of talking down what, you know, what the approach is going to be for camp, ask them some questions, you know, the best way to communicate if there's a difficult topic, or how do you get students to do something that they're not inclined to do, but how do you say it in a way that's motivational and inspiring instead of downgrading? That's an interesting topic right there, and one that we don't necessarily have a lot of time for, but find a mentor and ask them that, because that's something, I think that's a skill, unless you're born with that, which very few people, I think if any are, you spend, or I've spent a lot of my career, you know, up till now even, and I'm sure I'll do it for the rest of my life. What's the best way, you know, how do we get to know the individual students? And the way I say something to one person may be different than I say it to somebody else. You know, the way I say it to the eager, wide-eyed freshman versus the person who's my age, who got picked over for the job of section leader and is skeptical of me, How do I say the same thing that's going to motivate them? How do I not become defensive? How do I not give into emotions when things aren't going my way? I think any kind of discipline thing, I don't think that should be your job. I think that's, you want to bring that to the attention of the band staff, the people who went to college for this and are being paid a salary for it. But in terms of day-to-day things, try to grow your antennas a bit of, okay, I'm going to try to get to know each person a little bit better. So if I really want them to buy in and be motivated and do what I want them to do, how can I package it a little bit differently for each kid? Okay. Next, what I'd like to do is actually dial down into running the mechanics of a rehearsal. So again, this is a little bit different because for some programs, you have a percussion teacher or you have a tech, and their job is to run the rehearsal, and that's not really anything you're putting your hands on. For some of you, you're going to do it on a day-to-day basis because you're the only percussion person there. But I think regardless, it's always nice to learn and think about how we approach those things. When I was in drumline, I was also in front ensemble, specifically when I was in drum corps. And I was always interested because I thought I had a pretty good idea I was going to go on and have a career in percussion education. I was always curious about how the instructors would break things down. I mean, almost the same way, like if you study coaches, the way they break down a play or how they fix things. That's always was very fascinating to me. So I'll begin by talking about, going back to something we mentioned before, being organized. Once you've figured out what the plan is going to be for that day, say you have an hour of sectional time, band director wants you to work on measures 1 through 32 of the opener. You know the sections of music. You want to figure out ahead of time what are some tempos you can use. Specifically, not the full tempo, right? Because if the band director gives you the goal tempo for that day, chances are in the rehearsal, you're going to want to back it up a little bit. So on your own, the night before, look through the music. If you just have your own part, try to get a percussion score with everybody's part. Try to isolate where the problem areas might be. Figure out what tempos you can do along the way. So again, if the goal is 80, we're just hypothetically saying that. Okay, I'm going to start at 60. And then once they can do it, say 4 times pretty solidly at 60, I'm going to bump it up to 70. And you can do that with any tempo that you're given, but having that plan ahead of time keeps you from just kind of jumping in and running through things, which even sometimes if I'm not around our drum line and they're sort of running the rehearsal and they don't know I'm there, I'm just kind of walking by. My pet peeve, and I'll hear this all the time, they just run stuff. Full tempo, run it. Full tempo, run it. But I think having this plan ahead of time, you can go into the rehearsal being proactive, right? When it comes to analyzing things, this was another thing when I started off as a teacher, I was really unsure of how to break things down, right? We sort of hear that phrase, clean it up. I want the drum line to clean it up. And sometimes I've heard instructors even say, snare line, clean it up. And that's another pet peeve of mine where you're asking for something specific, but saying something very vague, right? If you want results, specific directions, small specific directions will give you specific results. Vague directions give you vague results. So, and if you look at the handout that I have here, Analyzing each section, there are some certain things we can talk about. Tempo is the section controlling tempo, right? If you listen and you're putting it against a metronome, are they dragging or are they rushing? You're going to do one of those two things. Like if you're talking about pitch, don't say it's out of tune. It's only one of two things. It's sharp or flat, right? So if it's not in tempo, it's one of two things. It's either too fast or too slow. That gives you a specific thing to say. Hey, this section is rushing. Let's not rush here. And you can drill down even more deeper into the details. That gives you something a little bit more specific to say. Next thing is rhythm. The cousin of tempo is going to be rhythm. If the tempo is getting weird, the determining factor in the tempo is rhythm. And that's affected by a few things. Our sticking, right? If there's a sticking there, that's not a straight sticking, chances are it's going to be affecting our tempo. The presence of any kind of embellishments, flams, drags, rolls, diddles, different things like that. Another thing you can analyze, and this is specifically useful for any non-percussionists here. If you're a band director and you're in charge of running the drum line, but you're not a percussionist, and maybe you're not so secure about picking up the sticks and demonstrating it, something you can break down without even knowing anything about what they're doing is the stick heights, right? We want them to have the same volume. We also want them to have the same control of rhythm, and stick heights control rhythm as well too. If a stick is closer to the head, it's going to reach the head sooner. And if a student is playing lower than everybody else, their chances of them rushing go up. They're playing the same rhythm, the same strokes, but they're closer to the head. The stick gets to the head sooner. The note speaks sooner. That causes rushing. If a student is playing way too high, higher than everybody else, playing the same rhythm, but the stick gets to the head later because it has a greater distance to travel, if we're holding the stroke type and the technique constant, that causes them to drag. So something that you can look at and look for is, are their stick heights consistent? And something very simple, you could have a stick height system like 9 inches, 6 inches, 3 inches, or level 1, 2, or 3, or have them watch the section leader and have them match the stick heights with the section leader, or you watch the section leader and then just go down the line and adjust the stick heights. That's something that if you're not secure about the audible things, how to clean that or how to demonstrate something, you can just look at their heights, and with any drum line, you can address that. That gives you something to work on right there. Okay. And then to drill down even deeper into some of the finer details or things such as tone quality, we can talk to our drum line about tone, right? This can be from something such as tuning. Again, we talked about having that checklist of the students keeping their drums maintained. Along with that is to keep their drums in some type of tuned condition where they might, you might go and really specifically tune them on show day or before a football game or something like that, but they should still be expected to keep their drums somewhat in tune. So going around and having them each play their drum and have them listen and say, okay, is your drum higher pitched than that one, or is it lower pitched? So instead of you being in charge and having to come up with content for them, they can start to self-assess, begin to self-teach, begin to have an idea of, on percussion, it doesn't matter what it is, there are good sounds and there are bad sounds. And defining the tuning we want, not only are you talking about a higher level of musicality that they can carry with them into concert percussion, into percussion ensemble, into solo playing, the idea of it's not just about these, but it's about these too. And we can start training our ears in very simple ways, just by going around the drum line and making sure the tuning is consistent and talking about ways each student can adjust that. Next, talking about tone quality. talking about our playing spots. Another thing, you can go down the whole drum line, and even if you don't know anything, you've never played a percussion instrument before, make sure they're all playing in the same part of the drum head. So for the snare drummers, making sure the sticks are at the same angle. I'm not a proponent of having them exactly together, maybe within an inch like that, but I guarantee you, you'll find some that are like this, some are like that, some are off to the side. And there's reasons behind technique that we could get into that affect that. But for right now, if you've never done this before, making sure the sticks all have the same angle, making sure they're all playing in the center part or in the proper part of the drum head. For the snare drums, that's going to be in the center. For bass drums, that's going to be in the center. For tenors, that's going to be in that first third of the head, not the center, that first third of the head. So we get that open, ringing, almost a timbale type sound. And then if you want to go even deeper than that, how they hold these sticks. For the most part, most students, not just young students, but students, even percussionists in general, I feel, grip the sticks way too tight. So when we grip them way too tight, we shut off the reverberation. So we get a very dry, staccato sound. When we still keep our fingers on, but loosen up our grip, be a little more supple here, you can tell the tone quality gets a little more dark, a little more open. Guess what? Same things we're talking about with during our brass sectional, right? So there's ways in drumline you can get their ears and their conception of sound and musicality set up so they're not only going to be a great drumline, but be overall great percussionists and great musicians, because they're not just thinking about the drum. They're thinking about the drum as a vehicle for everything else musicality wise that we expect from all of our other students, be it wind students, brass students, string students, vocal students. Cool. So a big thing, especially when a student is running the rehearsal by themselves, is how we set up the drum line, right? How we set the drum line up so the drum line can maintain eye contact with the section leader and also be able to hear everything the section leader is saying and vice versa. This is a big thing for us at MSU because the drumline section leaders run probably 80 to 90% of our rehearsals here. I do the camp with them. I'm there one afternoon a week. But besides that, and I'm there at most home games as well too, but besides that, their warm-up time, most of it, their warm-up time before band, that's being run by the students. So a setup that works well for us is having two sets of lines. So we have the snare drum section in a line, in a straight line, then the tenor section facing them. And then the cymbals, if you have cymbals, in back of the tenors facing in as well. And then the bass drum section in back of the snare drum section. So that way the bass drums can lock into the pulse coming from the snare drum section. And even though the section leader can't make eye contact with the bass drummers, they can hear what he or she is saying because he's relatively close. He can also turn around and talk with the bass drum captain, who is usually bass drum number 2. So that way we have a open means of communication between the players, open means of eye contact. Also, it's very compact. So we can all hear each other. We can lock in better as a group. The section leader can hear what's going on in each section better. And also, if there needs to be a metronome involved, you can put the speaker or the long ranger right in front of where the section leader is. Section leader can have the metronome with them. They can press go, and the metronome is centralized for everybody to listen to as well. Um, a thing that was told to me, and it's probably one of the best pieces of advice I received in becoming a teacher. I got it from a teacher of mine by the name of Mark Ford, who was my professor at the University of North Texas. And he said, when you're teaching, and this goes for beginners all the way up through all different levels, talk as little as possible. Only speak when it's absolutely needed. For younger players, a good reason for that is probably rehearsal is the only time they've looked at that music up all week long. Or at the very least, it's the most structured setting in which they're working on that. So every second is precious there. When you stop playing and start talking, it needs to be very precise, very specific, and very succinct, meaning that you have something very specific to a specific person, you say it and it's done and you go back to playing. Because if you stop playing, then you start to engage in this monologue, soliloquy type thing. The attention span of the overall group starts to do this, right? When they're playing, the attention's up here. And so for that reason, especially like in our setting here, we get a half an hour of warm up before band each day. And that's not only to warm up, but make sure the show music's going well for that day, make sure the cadences for our junction show are in good shape. We don't have a whole lot of time, right? So I would rather have a few mistakes going on as we're playing, but everybody's able to get some reps in and improve over the process of that time, as opposed to having the attention go flat. We miss out on those reps and the overall spirit of the rehearsal becomes more lethargic. Okay, so next what I want to do, I'm going to do a little screen share here. Let me see here. Get my screen share going. All right, so I'm sharing my screen now. I'm not very technologically savvy. Hopefully everybody can see the handout here. If not, I sent it to all of you, but I just wanted to have it in front of me. So that way, I can talk and give examples here. So I've given a couple of examples here on page 2 of a battery excerpt and a pit excerpt. And these are some ideas for if you are breaking down this section and trying to teach it / clean it up. Some approaches that have worked for me and worked for our program here. Again, I don't claim to have invented any of these, and I'm sure a number of you have used these same approaches as well. But here are some approaches that we have used. So the first thing I like to do is reduce the tempo, and my students hate this. Reduce the tempo. Again, as I said before, they love to play it down, and not only play it down, but at full tempo. And it's a big Scooby-Doo mystery why it's not getting better when we just run it down at full tempo over and over and over again, right? So I reduce the tempo, and even to the point where when we have drum camp and band camp coming up and I make the schedule, I have the tempos put in for each week. And we don't get to the full tempos probably till the first week of school. So as we're learning the music during camp, and then we're playing it during band camp, very rarely, if ever, is it at that full tempo. Because not only do I want to learn it slow, but I want to keep it slow. So that way the muscle memory is instilled. And when we do go to speed it up, they've learned it so thoroughly, not only technically, but in their ears as well, as far as how it's supposed to sound. So when I rehearse a section, I like to layer things in. right? If we have a rehearsal going on, it shouldn't be a subsectional for one section. So say, for example, I want to work on the tenor clair, or no, let's say I want to work on the bass drum part here at B, these first two bars, but it's not a bass drum sectional. The time I have, we only have time to be together as a full drum line. And if you're the only person running the show for your section, you might not have that luxury of being able to send the tenor drums off by themselves or send the snares off by themselves. You need to keep everybody together. So how do we keep everybody engaged and improving while I'm still really trying to address one thing, right? So I like to layer things in. I start with our strongest things first. So for example, if my snare drum part is the most solid thing, I'd say, okay, let's take the first two bars at B, we're gonna slow it down. We're gonna play 2 bars and then a bar tap. Okay, so the snares start off, shot, biggity biggity bop bop, biggity biggity dot 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 biggity biggity bomb, tap to tap tap tap. I give them a few times. As they're doing that, I tell the tenors, or the tenors, basses, and cymbals, I want you to look at your part and sing your part in your head as they're playing that, right? So I have almost a snare drum metronome going, and everybody else is now mentally engaged. Next, I bring in the tenors. All right, tenors. Biggity biggity bop bop, biggity biggity bop bomb, shunka counter down, boom, tap, tap, to tap, 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 as the snares and tenors are playing, right? And then I bring in the cymbals. Again, we mentioned before the bass drums in this part were the weakest thing, so I'm layering everybody else in. So the groove is there, even if there's a little bit of dirt going on or uncertainty going on in the bass drum part, my ensemble is solid. So even if fixing the individual parts in the bass drum are going to take some time, especially with younger students, the ensemble can function and is not negatively impacted by one part. Okay, and then after that, I'm going to add in my bass drum part. You can go 2 bars by 2 bars, measure by measure. I remember the drum corps I aged out with, the Glassmen from Toledo. Unfortunately, they're no longer around, but our percussion instructor, a guy by the name of Lee Bettis, he would go beat by beat. We'd work through a section. Okay, play the first beat. Now play, when we do that like 10 times. Okay, add the next beat, and we would do that. So again, those are different ways, you know. Okay, so going specifically section by section, in the snare drums, I think some things you can think about is take out any flams, drags, rolls, anything like that, any kind of embellishments, and just get down to the essential rhythms. You can even take out accents. What you can even do is take out the sticking, make it a straight sticking. So for example, we have a paradiddle diddle sticking in the first bar as well as at the end of that second bar. As you're having them work on this, as they're repping it over and over, have them switch to a straight sticking and take out the flams, take out the accents. So we would get ba, bigga bigga ba, da, bigga dum. Have them do that a bunch of times, and then say, okay, we're going to leave the flams and the accents out. Play it all at one height, but now with the paradiddle in there. Dot, digga digga dot dot digga digga dum. So they're having to really stroke out those doubles, because that paradiddle diddle, when they first play it, it's going to rush. The doubles are going to kind of condense in there. So having to play it at a full height, using that wrist to articulate those doubles, they train their ears to what that in-time double sounds like. Go back to the paradiddle sticking. That sticking is going to conform to what their ears hear. All right, the ears drive the hands. A big thing for me in teaching, not just drumline, but any kind of percussion, is the ears drive the hands. I think we, as percussionists, we tend to get into it an awful lot when it comes time for technique. The way we hold the sticks. Do we use the wrist or do we use molar? Do we use the fingers? The fingers come off, da, 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 da. The truth is, you can watch great players using drastically different techniques. Now, that's not to say we throw technique out, because you do need a way to execute, right? You do need a vocabulary. And as the teacher, it's up to you to decide what is the most efficient and pedagogically sound vocabulary you're going to teach them. That's right, you need to make a choice on that. But I've watched different players with drastically different techniques all sound great, all sound amazing. And the reason I think that is, the thing they have in common is their ears. They know how they want the passage to sound. And the hands will follow that, right? So train the ears first, which usually means take out the accents, take out the sticking that's there. So you give them some ear training of what that rhythm sounds like. And then when you go to dress it up with an accent, it's going to be really hard to distort that rhythm, because their understanding of that passage is based on the rhythm first and foremost. You can add anything else in. I've seen that even with beginning students. Okay, so what else? Going on to tenors. For me, a lot of it for me is the same as the snare drums. Playing it on one drum. Another thing that I terrorize my drum line with here, and they hate it. Play it on the two. If you can't play it on the two, you can't play it around the drums, right? And I get that there are things that are specific to the art of tenor drum playing, but I'm old-fashioned. I don't think of marching tenors as a discrete instrument by themselves. I think it as 5 drums. And the way you play one drum is the way you play 5 drums. And yeah, there is, there's a lot to be said for the facility of getting around the drums and scrapes and crossovers and things like that. The majority of issues I see either in adjudicating or teaching do not have to do with those things. It's fundamental understanding of rhythm and technique that exposes itself when played on one drum, right? So again, that's something else. As their teacher, you may not be a percussionist, you may not be a tenor drummer, I'm certainly not. So something you can do, a lot of mileage can be gotten out of taking that passage and having them play it on the 2 drum or on the 1 drum or on the Spock drum. And a lot of things that you're going to be able to hear are going to start to pop out. The heights are going to be all over the place. The rhythms are going to rush or drag. The stick's going to rebound when it shouldn't, and vice versa. You can just go back to that check sheet I made earlier when it comes to talking about snare drums. Okay, so bass drums, a very common thing. Of course, if you have a split part that has 6 tuplets in it or 16th notes, for example, the first bar at letter B there, boom, ba, 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 biggada, 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 bum. Having the students take out these 6 tuplet notes and only playing the 8th note outline. Boom, got, go. Again, I don't claim to have invented that. That's been around long before me. But you'd be surprised, again, if I watch students lead a rehearsal, a lot of times they're just playing the part as written. And there's 2 parts to that equation. One is, of course, the spacing of the 6 tuplets, of course. But the first line of battle is going to be, where do we place those downbeats, right? Because you can have distorted 6 tuplets, boom, dot, 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 diggity, 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 dum. I can still buy that, right? If you're working with students that are beginners or not very advanced, for a beginning interpretation of that part, having each 3 a little weird, but the downbeats are in time, I can buy that. And for the reason being, the ensemble can play with that. I'll take a weird rhythmic interpretation, but good time, right? Another thing you can do, and this is something, and again, I don't take any kind of credit for this. I'm not sure where I learned about it, but we tried it this fall and it worked wonders. Play all the split rhythms as unison. So for example, if we take a look at that second bar, right? A common approach is to have each student understand their rhythm where they come in. So for example, if I was playing bass 1, I'd play a 2. If I was playing bass 3, 1 E and a 2 E and a. And that's the way I was taught my first year in drum corps. I played bass 3, and so I did an awful lot of that. And E and that's one way to do it. But I think having multiple ways to approach it, so you don't burn kids out, you don't hit that wall. Another approach, which I've found, is to have them play that rhythm, but have them all play it together. Boom, ba boom, ba 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 boom, ba ba da 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 dum. Boom, ba boom, bucka bucka da 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 dum. And that what that's doing is training the ears. Going back to that same thing again, knowing how it sounds. Right? And you can go back and forth. You can reinforce the thinking side of it with the counting, and then go and switch gears, reinforce the listening side. Boom, and we've done that even on some parts that were really, really hard. And within a couple of reps, it was like night and day. I mean, to the point where the members of the bass line were kind of looking around at each other going, whoa, okay, that's not going to be a problem anymore, right? So, yeah, and again, I'm sure there's other ways of approaching that. There's other ways of breaking things down. In our world here, those are just some of the ones that have worked well for us. When it comes to rehearsing the front ensemble, a lot of the same principles are going to apply. I approach it the same way I approach the battery. I mean, probably for the reason that I view drumline and marching percussion front ensemble really is no different than rehearsing a percussion ensemble or rehearsing a concert percussion ensemble group. I mean, you're really dealing with an awful lot of the same things, maybe just presented in slightly different ways. Okay. Again, I try to layer in the easier parts first. If there's a repetitive part going on, again, if we look at the bottom, percussion 2, I'm not sure what chart this is. This is something I wrote for a high school a number of years back. It's sort of a pop tune. So I think that bottom line, I think was a hi-hat or a shaker. So that's going to be going on the entire time. Then I'm going to layer in probably the next easiest part, which is going to be marimba 2. Bum, 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 bum. Right? I'm going to layer that in, and then slowly but surely work in the rest of those more challenging parts. Again, changing the tempo as needed. And then, since I have the battery parts here as well, what I can do as an instructor is start to mimic what the battery's doing. Instead of having a metronome going, I'm a big fan of having a pair of drumsticks, and I'll have a hi-hat or a snare drum or a break drum or something like that. Not only so I can keep time, but also as they get more confident, I can start to mimic the parts that the battery is playing, and start to discuss with them how their parts are going to lock in with that, how the parts are similar, what's something they can listen to when they're on the field trying to fit it together with the rest of the ensemble. So for example, the xylophone part has boom, bop, bop, dot, digga, digga, boom, dot, 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 digga, digga, doom. So what I might do is play or somehow mimic either on the break drum or the hi-hat or cowbell or something what the snare drum part is, because notice the snare drum playing on the ride cymbal here has the same rhythm, or essentially the same rhythm, as the xylophone and marimba. So again, that gives me another thing to discuss with them. Going back to, as I said it, we're training the ears now. We're talking about the timing, we're talking about playing the notes, but we can also, even at a slow tempo, start training our ears. What do we listen to? The same way when I'm playing in an orchestra or in a wind ensemble, yeah, I might watch the conductor, or it might be more conducive to find whatever instrument, if it's close enough to me in the setup, that has the same part as me or provides the rhythm or tempo, if it's not the percussion, right? So these are skills that aren't only going to pay off in the immediate sense with the drum line or the pit, but you're setting them up for greater musical maturity when you get into percussion ensemble, you get into concert music, you get into solo things. Cool. So let me stop my screen share here. Okay, so I guess as we start to finish up now, I just noticed I went over. I'm sorry. I know I promised this would only be an hour, but we're all so much fun to talk to. I got so excited. Yeah, I mean, it's I'm excited, and it's exciting to speak to all of you about this, because I think not only, for the future of music education, not only in our state here, across the region. I'm speaking to some people from across the country here, which I think is awesome. Um, you know, I think, the role of a teacher, or the role of a music teacher or music educator, cannot be over emphasized. Um, and it's funny, like now I look at it from the opposite side, because this fall, for the first time, I mentioned I've been a band kid my whole life. This fall, I'm in a new role. I'm a band parent for the first time. My son is going to be he's going to be a freshman at Starkville High School playing trombone. And so he starts camp on Wednesday, right? So as I was preparing for this talk, it wasn't just another percussion clinic talk. I was really thinking about my son being there, albeit he plays trombone, but he's going to be there, on that first day, going through those same things. And so I think about, especially as I talk to young people, and I guess this is directed to the students on this call right now, think about how awesome your band teacher is, how awesome your percussion director is, the experiences you've had, not just musically, but socially, what it's done for you in your life. Again, we're all different, and music is unique in that it does different things for us when we need it to. Sometimes it's just music and just performance. Sometimes it's something we need in our personal life, the camaraderie, the sense of meaning, or the sense of belonging, the sense of purpose, that's maybe, hard for anybody, but especially when you're a younger person, that the thing that band or music provides there, and the fact that your band director is the person that facilitates that with you, and the things you wouldn't have in your life if that person was not there. So as you're thinking about your future, what you're going to do, go on to do, consider music education as a possibility. Again, you all have a lot of potential. You all have a lot of things, a lot of opportunities, things you could choose, things you could do. And these years are terribly important for that, to try different things and see where your fit might be. But think about that, think about where, the experiences and positive things you've had in your life because of what your band director's done. And think about how awesome it would be to bring those to other people as well, because positivity, no matter where we get it in life, especially in this day and age, is so important. It's so crucial. And at least for me, there's no better way to access positivity than through music and through teaching it. So I would encourage you to investigate that. I think you know, if you do a little bit of thinking, you might find that might be a possibility. That might be something you would certainly like in a way that you could serve countless people and if in impact lives and communities in countless different ways, all of which are extremely positive. So I want to thank you guys. If there's any questions, I don't know if I saw any pop up. That's fine if not. I know I've been talking at you for over an hour right now. But if you have any questions, anything I can do for you, my email is on the sheet there. Our social media is there as well. I'll probably follow up with y'all since I have your emails just to see your impressions of it, you know, see if there's anything, if I do something like this again, what are some more topics in which I can be of service? Teddy Hall's got his hand up. Let's see. Yes, Teddy.
Good evening. Good evening, Jason. Really, can you hear me all right?
Oh, yes, sir.
Really enjoyed the session. It's good to see you. Just a quick question. I'm going to role play a scenario, and I just wanted to get your feedback. I'm sure Neil can attest to this. But Dr. Baker, I'm a parent, and I just paid all of this money for my child and these band dues, and they just had their heart set on making snare drum, and they didn't make it. And I see they're put in the pit. And Dr. Baker, we just didn't pay all this money for them to be just lugging these keyboards up and down the field. And if you can't do anything about it, we're just going to have a conference with the band director. And if that doesn't work, we're going to the principal. How would you handle a situation like that?
Sure. That's a big one, Ted. Man, going to the principal. Wow. I don't teach public school full time. If my wife was here, she would be the person to ask. And I don't intend to presume for a second that I understand all of the nuts and bolts that go into the administrative duties of public school teachers. My hat is off to them. But we do have this come up at MSU a lot, where especially even more so because we get Johnny the snare drummer. And Johnny the snare drummer has been the snare drummer his whole time in high school, and everybody knows him by that. He plays snare drum. His identity is based on that, yada, yada, yada. He comes to us. Johnny the snare drummer does not get to play snare drum, and he gets to play something else. Probably the best example we'll get is we have a large cymbal section here. We have 15 or 16. A lot of those people, some do come to try out for cymbals only, and it's because it's a big thing here. But a number of them as well were Johnny the snare drummer. I tell them that they will not be better off if they don't do band. I guarantee them this, that they're not, their situation as a student, at least here, and I would like to think it's somewhat similar in a high school setting. They're not going to have more friends if they don't do band. They're not going to have more structured, positive activities on a Friday or Saturday if they don't do band. They're going to be involved. They may not be doing the thing musically that was their first choice, but as a person, they're going to be engaged in quality activities that are going to make their life better. I think if you're speaking to a parent, that's a language they'll understand more so. And I would like to think as a parent myself, if somebody approached me about that, and we'll take something I don't know anything about, like if my son or daughter tried out, or I not auditioned, but tried out for the lacrosse team, and a similar thing happened, and the coach talked to me, knowing I wouldn't know anything about lacrosse, how it's played, what's done, but they talked to me about a positive experience for my child. I think that's going to go further. And then they will have the opportunity to audition the following year. And I guarantee you, they will be better off having been on another instrument for that year, because they're going to get to play with better players. And that's a hard thing, especially for young people. As an older person now, I love being around better players. I love when I'm the worst player there, because I know I'm going to learn something, right? And I'm old and I've been out of school for a long time. And I just want to be around somebody that makes me go, man, I got to go figure it out. But for a young person, that's a harder pill to swallow. That's intimidating. But to get them to understand, they're going to be able around better players. They can watch those players. They can play with them. They're going to be in band all year round. They're not living and dying by marching band. I certainly would hope not. Marching band is awesome. It's great. It's a great activity. I'm certainly, it's a big part of my life, but it's not the only thing. We have concert band. We have percussion ensemble. We might have world music. We might have solo and ensemble. And if you're in the front ensemble, if a student, they tried out for the drumline and they're on front ensemble, well, guess what? When it comes time for concert band, they're going to have an advantage because they played keyboard percussion or timpani or something like that. And I think that's a culture building thing, but hopefully over time we have a program or programs that where the marching thing, yeah, that's exciting. That's the most maybe visible thing we do, but it's not the only thing. And the culture where you're selling a culture of the overall program or overall music making, as opposed to the hyper specialized role of I play bass too, right? You know, yeah, I might do that one year during marching band, but then I get to do some concert percussion, then I do some percussion ensemble, and I better be well-rounded on the other instruments, because when I do percussion ensemble or we have part assignments in wind ensemble, if I want to play the cool parts, I better have my head into a bunch of other things as well. So I don't know. I mean, I think dealing with parents and administration, and my hat goes off to public school teachers. But as a parent, that's what I would want to hear. That would be convincing to me. And as an educator myself, albeit in a slightly different environment, those are the things that have helped me to retain and grow the students and grow a culture that I think is a little bit more holistic. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, cool. Somebody, Neil Flum, thank you. Oh, cool. Thank you, Neil. That's awesome, man. Hey, great to see you, by the way, man. The mustache and beard, I didn't recognize. I thought you were Scott Slocum at first. No. All right, guys. Well, thank you again. If there's anything else, if you have any questions, Cindy, thank you. Awesome, Cindy. If you have any questions for me or any way I can be of service, if you are, you know, any questions you have, or if you have any types of issues I can help with, if I can't help you myself, I will do my best to find a person who can. So I think there was a hand up there, Garrett Johnston. Fire away.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. First off, I just want to echo what Teddy said. This was a great session. I really learned a lot from it and really appreciate you taking the time to do this. But I want to ask a question that might affect somebody else besides me. I've done a couple of camps so far and done some tech jobs for some local high schools, fresh out of community college. But I want to know if there's any advice that you could give to maybe some newbie techs going into either their first camp or maybe within their first 10 camps or anything like that, that they might could go in and help the students with.
Yeah, sure. I think first and foremost, help the band to sound better, right? So find out what the band director wants. And I think I mentioned this before, but find out what the band director needs, find out if there's a percussion director there, find out what they need, and structure what you're doing to reemphasize that. Also, getting the students to do simple things well, right? I think we tend to overthink, like, I'm going to have to clean flam fives, or I'm going to have to teach formality technique. And yeah, those might be true, but how do they line up their drums when they're done? How do they mark time at the same time? A big thing for us, which our band directors always subtly suggest to me, or sometimes not so subtly, is making sure they all mark time the same way. Because we get kids from all different places. Some people lift up the feet, some people lift up the heels, some do like this newfangled like shuffle thing that I don't know what that is, right? And they're just like, I mean, they could care less about the cleanliness of the flam fives at letter B or something. They just look at the drum line and go, their feet aren't exactly doing, the same thing. So taking a step back from the percussion stuff and, kind of dialing more into like just like basic band things, like the way they march. I think being an ally there, that sets you apart from a lot of other people in your position, or who might be in your position, where it's all about drums, or it's all about impressive technical things, I think doing that. And what I can do, I have an article I wrote, which is advice for your first percussion or for your first drumline gig. It's not designed for teachers, like you're a full-time teacher. It's like you're in college or you're in community college and you get hired to do like a week of band camp. I have an article I wrote that was in Percussive Notes. I'll send it to the entire list of people here. That'll get a little bit more into things like how to make sure you're getting paid. There's that, things, what to say to kids and what not to, how to handle if you're asked to write. It gets a little bit deeper. I'll send that out to the entire group here, so I can make a note of that. Yeah, that'll answer probably far more questions than we have time for here. So yeah, man, cool, awesome. All right, everyone, so thank you all for being here. Again, it's an honor to get to talk to you. I'm blown away that so many people would listen to me talk for an hour about anything. So and if you're around Starkville this fall, if you're at a game, come up and say hi. If you're interested in anything that we have going on here, if you're a director and you want your students to get more information on our program, different events we have going on, auditions, things of that nature. If you're a student and you want more information about what we're doing, send me an email. I'll send you when all of our concerts are, when our audition dates are, when our clinic days are. A big part of what we do here is not just teaching our current students, but we really want to engage and serve as a resource, not just for Mississippi in the Southeast, but for as many far-reaching folks as possible. So thank y'all. Have a good night. Have a good rest of your summer. And best of luck at band camp. All right, bye.